Good. All righty. Well, first of all, welcome everyone to the Buddhism 101. We are getting started a little early because I have some housekeeping things to take care of first. The very first thing is make sure your cell phones and your smartwatches are either on vibrate or turned off completely. Or the sound turned off. Unless you have any really urgent reason, I think you can be away from the world, disconnected for an hour. No. That should be fine. So welcome to the, I guess this is Buddhism 101 V2. We had the Buddhism 101 we started five and a half years ago. Then COVID hit. After a couple of years of being in person, we did online. If you want to see some of those previous online ones, they are still available on the temple's YouTube page. And so they were recorded on Zoom and they were then posted up. So if there are different topics on there, I try to put titles that were pretty descriptive. I have to say the one that was the most popular was the presentation on forgiveness. So if that's a topic that's of interest, take a look at that one. For those of you who have not introduced, I think I introduced myself. My name is Alexander Quiros. I just go by Alex. I am a licensed psychologist in the community, and I've been practicing Buddhism officially for I'd say almost 12 years, maybe a little more. I say officially because one of the things that attracted me to Buddhism is that without knowing it, I had actually been practicing Buddhism, just didn't know that that was the system that existed for it. I was previously a Catholic, had been studying to become a Catholic priest for a while, left that, and then decided, well, psychologist is close to being a lay priest, so I think I'll just choose that route. But eventually I was introduced to Buddhism like many Americans, which is through books, especially through the Dalai Lama, and then eventually Thich Nhat Hanh. And as I learned more and more, I started becoming more and more enamored of the philosophy and the psychology of Buddhism. To the point where now I'm hoping that I can share some of that passion with you so that you can use the teachings of Buddhism to suffer less, help others suffer less, and just be a generally happier person. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure, I'm Leon Bryant, and I've been coming to the temple since 2016, and it's been an amazing experience. I serve as the co-host of Alex for the group, just so we have some coverage there. But yeah, I'm just like he. I'm just so glad to see us back physically in person together because it's so much more powerful. I think that the Zoom was nice, but because it's all we had, right? But anyway, I'm really looking forward to our journey here, and I think Alex has a good program that he'll tell you a little bit more about later. But in any case, glad to meet you.
Master Thich Quang Tri.
Venerable Quang Tri, for those of you that I have not met. I'm not going to tell you my life story, so if you have any questions, we'll answer those later.
Thank you.
Master Quang Tri is one of the monks in residence here. And then Alex and I are lay people just like you that belong to the Shanga.
For those of you who haven't attended the temple here, there's 3 monks, and the abbot has a really fascinating history, and so if ever you get a chance to ask him about that, you always need to hear. So as we begin, I want you to do me a favor, just look around at the people here, all right? These are people who are curious. These are individuals who are open to learning, individuals who are open to growth. It's a good bunch of people to have around you. None of us are perfect. If you are, please raise your hand. Otherwise, we're really just a really good group of people. And one of the important things about the practice of Buddhism is the community of practitioners. That you are practicing with others and you support each other. So what I'd like you to do briefly is just sort of turn to each other, pick one person, two people, if there's an odd number of people, and I want you to just introduce yourself to each other, and then also what brought you here. And that's just real quickly an answer to those. So go ahead and do that. Hi, I'm Alex. Hi, Leah. Hi,
I'm Lila. I'm Meredith.
My saint. Pretty much. Yeah, but instead of drove you here, it's mostly becoming more sane.
Well, it was
Fantastic. Everyone wants to share. This is what we can't do online, right?
That's what it inspired. Like, all right.
And so I learned that, and I think I took that into work about.
Even after what you said, nobody took the front. Just like in church.
What we need to do next time is put the front row like right here.
Yeah, there you go.
And then we'll just lift those off.
That will be close.
Yes, I came to temple many years.
All right, let's start wrapping up. I'll give you another 30 seconds. Another 30 seconds, just so you can wrap up. So like I said, it's important to start building that sense of community. I think one of the lessons that I took from COVID years, the pandemic years, was just how important the social interaction is. And how wonderful it is to have an opportunity to be with individuals who are like-minded, who are curious about the same things, and who are growth-oriented, who want to grow and be better individuals. The other benefit of community is that oftentimes we meditate better in community than by ourselves. It's just something weird. I don't know why, but meditation in a group is often a little easier than when you're doing it by yourself, unless you've been practicing for a while. But when you're starting, it's very helpful. The agenda for, the typical agenda for these meetings is going to be, I will give you brief instructions on meditation, followed then by actual meditation for about 10 minutes. And then after the meditation, I'll give a short Dharma talk, followed with some discussions. What we'll be doing a little differently is that I will also be assigning homework, questions to ponder over the next month or so, to build up towards what the next lesson will be. For today, we're just going to talk a little bit about the brief history of the Buddhism, specifically Siddartha, Sakyamuni Siddartha, the individual, the man who became the Buddha, and why that journey is important for our practice. Good, so let's move into sort of the instructions for meditation. For those of you who have meditated before and have your own practice, feel free to just continue doing whatever you usually do. For those of you who are starting practice of meditation or want to learn a little more, there are 3 techniques that I usually teach to beginning meditators. The first technique is to simply follow the breath. Just simply follow the sensation of breathing, how it feels as the air fills your lungs, passes through and hits the back of your throat, and how it feels as the breath exhales, how it feels on your lips, and just follow the sensation of breathing. And just be with your breath. The second technique is to count your breaths. So count your breaths until you get to 10, then you start over again. And if you lose your place because you got distracted with your thoughts or feelings, just start over again with number 1 and just keep counting like that. The third technique is to use a gatha, a mantra, or a phrase or a word that either is meaningful to you or not, and just repeat it over and over again. Oftentimes we synchronize it with the breath. Seems pretty simple and straightforward, but as you will soon find, that the mind tends to have its own agenda. And so when you feel distracted, when the thoughts come, when the emotions arise, think of them as just sort of a wave that crash upon your consciousness and then slip back into unconsciousness. Or another technique is to simply observe your thoughts. I'm just like, oh, I'm having a thought. And don't engage it, don't follow it, just sort of let it there, and you'll see that over time it just fades away. Same thing with emotions. If they arise, label them, just observe them. Oh, I'm feeling something, or I'm feeling angry, feeling sad, and then just let it die off. Let it slowly slip away. In terms of posture, I think most of you are experienced meditators because you're kind of in the position that's comfortable for you. So cross-legged is usually the most helpful. If your feet fall asleep or you feel numbness, sometimes raising your buttocks a little higher, so I have an additional cushion that then brings my knees down a little bit. That helps. If you're able to do the half lotus, where you can put one foot over the other, that can help with some of that as well. If you're able to do the full lotus, which I cannot demonstrate, that's also very helpful. Sometimes sitting cross-legged in the usual way does put pressures on the outside of our feet, and that can cause some numbness on the feet. So experiment with different positions. If you're just starting, then don't worry about. If you need to shift a little bit during the meditation, that's fine. Just do it quietly and then try to settle back in. Good. So now let's just do 10 minutes of meditation. What I recommend often is take 3 deep breaths, making each exhale longer than the inhale. When you finish your 3 breaths, let the breath go and just focus on the breath. in the beginning, and really not that far back, but it sounds a little more dramatic than 2,500 years ago. So 2,500 years ago, Sakyamuni Siddartha was born, and there are a lot of stories about his birth. One of the legends is that before he was born, the king, his father, consulted a wise man in the community and asked, prophesy about my son. And the wise man said, well, he's either going to be a great king or a great holy man. The king, for his own reasons, wanted Siddartha to become a great king. He wanted to see him rule over the lands and maybe even grow the kingdom. And so the legend goes that the king made efforts to protect Siddartha from seeing anything negative or seeing anything that might inspire him to become a holy man. He wanted him to focus just on becoming a good king. Archery, riding horses, politics, fighting. But around the age of 29, Siddartha was just feeling dissatisfied, empty. Like there's got to be more than this. This is really all there is. Those questions might sound familiar to some of us. And so Siddartha took his charioteer Channa and said, Channa, let's go for a ride outside the city. And so together they went on the chariot and they started just touring outside in the city. And the legend says that Siddartha was just looking around and he saw something unusual. He was like, what's that? And Channa was like, what, my lord? That. And Channa was like, that's an old man. A what? An old man. We're all going to age. That's just, with the passing of every year, your body will start to decline. You'll get wrinkles. You grow gray if you're lucky to last that long. And that kind of shocked Siddartha. So they drove around a little more. And Siddartha noticed something else. Like, what's wrong with him? And Channa looked and noticed who it was, and it was a man who was ill. And well, that man's ill. He's sick. He's what? He's sick. Part of being human means also getting sick and having to deal with illness. So again, Siddartha was kind of taken aback by this. He hadn't really seen this because he had been protected all his life. They drove around some more and came across a funeral procession. And there were people carrying a body on their shoulders. And Siddartha was like, what's going on here? And Channa said, they're burying their dead family member. We all die. It doesn't matter if you're king or pauper, woman or man, we all die. And that kind of shocked Siddartha. It hadn't really dawned on him that he wouldn't be king forever. So we're driving a little more, driving back, and the fourth event that caught Siddartha's attention was he saw a holy man. And this time what caught his attention was that this holy man seemed so serene, so calm, so sure of himself. And Siddartha said, I want that. I want what he has. So that night, Siddartha sort of escaped the walls, went off into the wilderness, found a mendicant, another man who was practicing or trying to be holy, traded clothes with him, and then entered into sort of the mendicant lifestyle. And went off into the forests, determined to find the answer to the problem that is suffering. Now, this is just a legend. I find it hard to believe that Siddartha would have grown to the age of 29 and never encountered illness, death, or age. But the point of the story is not so much to be historically accurate. The idea is to bring to our attention that the same things that bothered Siddartha are often the same things that bother us. We're going to die. We have gotten sick. We've gotten through a pandemic, and so we remember the stresses of that. We're going to grow older, right? And we've seen something in our lives that is that we aspire to. Somewhere we've seen someone or something or heard of someone that seems to have the kind of life that we want. This is an important story to start with because every other Dharma talk I give from here on out will be based on or will refer to Siddartha's efforts to answer the problem of suffering. And so what I hope to give over the next, I think I have a curriculum for up to 3 years. So we'll just do 3 years and then rotate those 3 years. And don't worry, you're not signing up or anything, you're not. All right? But just so you know, that my goal is to have something different every month for the next 3 years, and then rotate through those things again for other people as they come in. Okay? Each of the talks will be independent, but they may build upon some previous lessons. So if you have to miss, I'm not going to hold it against you. Okay? But each of the lessons, my goal is to teach you something that Buddhism is telling us helps reduce suffering in ourselves and in others. Something that will make us happier, healthier, mentally and physically maybe. Make us not as attached, more at peace. So the question I have for you for discussion is this. Siddartha went off to the forest to seek the answer to the problem of suffering. What do you hope to get out of the Buddhism 101 classes that will either help you with a specific problem, or what do you feel like you want to get out of the Buddhism 101 classes? And now I turn it over to you.
For me, what I'd like to get out of this group is, like you said earlier, being around other people that are open-minded, want to learn. So that's what I'd like to get out of it. Also, finding ways to deal with the stresses and managing that everyday things that come up in life.
Good.
is no matter how long you've been studying, it's always fantastic to just come back to the beginning, back to the basic fundamental concepts of Buddhism, because like Alex said, everything's built on top of that. So, we'll be thinking about things and following things, and sometimes it's just good to kind of come back and ground yourself in the basics. So that's kind of what I like about the class from my perspective.
I have this sensation that when I'm going through suffering and then I realize the lesson that this could be teaching me, it's always a very simple lesson, and it always feels like I'm learning it for the very first time, when in fact I've heard it many times before. And I think that it's good to have a space like this where I can bring myself and all of myself into it, and then apply those lessons to my friend of mine.
You just gave me chills. Yes. That need for repetition, that need for, and we'll talk about that. There's going to be a talk on impermanence and why repetition is important. So I'll mention that. One or two more. You don't have to talk if you don't want to.
I could quote this wrong, but I feel like in one of the past sessions you said suffering comes from like your mind being sticky, like hanging on to things or something. And I feel like my mind is extremely sticky, and I want to try and understand more about the stickiness and how to let things go more personally.
I find in settings like this, I often feel like I maybe come into the space not really expecting anything, but then I inevitably will hear a little jewel of something that I take away. And like already, I don't remember what the context was or what you were saying, but you said the word compassion, which of course is very Buddhisty. And but that word rang a bell for me with something else that's going on with another situation outside of here, and was a very nice and gentle reminder for me.
I like your point of coming into it open-minded with no particular expectation. That's okay too, and just see what arises.
Good. I promise you, your goals are my goals now. And so, which is pretty easy because the goals you've each mentioned, Buddhism touches upon. And so I will be, my hope is to, at the same time that I'm teaching the basics of Buddhism, I'm also talking about the practical applications in our daily life to help reduce some of that suffering, to help reduce some of that stickiness, to help reduce some of that loneliness, and give that sense of community, that you're not alone. You look around, you have 1, 3, 4, 8, 9, 10. So there's 10 of us here. We're all people who want to be better, just like you. We're all people who want a better world, just like you. And so this is a nice reminder that we're not alone in all the suffering going on in our lives. Before I give you your homework, I do want to, one of the things I'm going to emphasize a little more this time around than I haven't in the past is the importance of finding balance between self-care and other care. So, for example, making donations to the temple will help with the lights, the air conditioning, with the space here. And so there are 2 boxes in the front there wherever if ever you feel inclined, that's where you can make your donations. If you have other priorities for your money, and that's fine, then think about sharing your time and talent. What's your talents that you can share with the temple? Because the temple becomes a focal point where you can help alleviate suffering for others and even for yourself. So think of other ways that you could donate of your time and talent, and reduce suffering in yourself and others through that. And if you don't want to share time, talent, or money with the temple, share it with something else that's important to you. The idea is to try and find, a lot of times when we get really stressed, we become very self-focused. And so the act of giving, whether it be money, time, or talent, is a way of becoming other-focused and finding some balance. And if you're in a profession of other care, like a social worker, or if you're a nurse, or something where you're always giving of yourself to someone else, then the ask is different. Do more self-care. Take care of yourself better. Okay? So, your assignment for the next month. We're going to meet in 2 weeks, but in 2 weeks we're going to have a story. This third Tuesday of every month will be dedicated to a story or a parable, koan, if we decide to do some of the Zen stories, that Leon will pick for us. And then, a month from now, or the next first Tuesday, we'll do the next topic, Buddhism 101. And so the next one, I'm going to talk about the universal characteristics of the universe. What are some of the basic things that Buddha says applies to everyone and everything, and what that means for our daily life. Okay. But between here and then, what I want you to do, based on the Dharma talk on the Buddha's life, I want you to think about the implications of illness, aging, and death in your life. Take some time to think about what are some of your thoughts. Take time to feel what are some of the feelings that come as you ponder your illness, your aging, your death, the illness and aging of others, and the death of others. What arises? What anxieties come up? What things are you calm about and at peace at? Right? Is there a specific way you would hate to die? Right? Is there a specific illness you would hate to have? What's been your past experience with aging, illness, and death?